Alrighty. So without further ado, let us begin this great adventure together. As my as my voice is already like, oh, I'm shy. I'm a little bit shy. It's like I'm not shy. I'm ready to rock and roll. My voice is already ready to be a little stage fright, but that's okay. But because here we go. Welcome to the narrative design talk about world building. World building is something I'm very passionate about as a narrative designer. So let's just get right into it. So what is a metaverse world? It's a new and living, breathing medium. This is something that is alive. This is what I pitch to people all the time. This isn't something that is just set in stone, that is just going to be set and then forgotten. The way the sandbox and the metaverse is going to work, that things are constantly changing, evolving. The people who create lands, be it by themselves or with studios, will be able to change it in any way to adapt, retell, expand upon other people's lands. People will be, they'll be inspired by someone's experience, want to make one of their own. I have this vision of people coming together to kind of like make almost their own little MMO areas, right? Scattered throughout the metaverse. And one of the things that we found that has been really fun with metaverse stories is in a metaverse world, it's a moment of time with their own linearity. You're popping in at this very particular moment of time. And for some experiences, you can play from a beginning, middle, and an end. Other ones are more open-ended, and you kind of find your own adventure. But it's really important that you, as the player, find the story at just the right moment to be engaging. As we go through this talk, we will talk about a lot about not only what makes normal world building, but also metaverse world building. Especially all the stuff that I found working across now 2 different seasons of the Sandbox and looking at the fan feedback and everything. And it's been quite an amazing journey. I can't wait to share a lot of that knowledge with all of you guys. But yeah, I really, all signs indicate to the idea of expansion of user-made worlds. So once the actual publishing goes live and way down the line, and everyone is sharing their stories, we're going to have people coming together and just being like, oh my gosh, I love your world. Can I do a short story in that world? Can I make an experience that's inspired by your place? And people will you're going to see this tapestry of wonderful experiences that will be utilized by people all over the world from all different kinds of cultures. And it's a very exciting time. So without further ado, let us get into what actually makes world building proper. It seems we have a strange eye popping in here, a little odd. I wonder who the heck is that? And when we dive into world building, first off, there's a couple things to note about this presentation. One of the slides is a hero, one is the villain, and one of these slides will die. I don't know which one. We'll find out together. So world building. This is the one that I think most people think of when they think of world building. You start with a town or a country or planet and then theme it up. Is it like an Old West world? Is it a place that is like 100% fantasy? Is it like Star Wars where it's taking place in space across a number of planets? So start with something like that. And bullet point of history. This is something that I like to tell people. The main trick with world building is not to get caught in the infinite mire that is designing a world as the wheels keep spinning. Right? It is something that is if you spend too much time on this, you'll never get out of it. So what you have to do is spend just enough time to get ready, to get inspired, and to be able to pitch this world, and really be able to get people on board. So bullet point of history. And I'll get into that here in a little bit. Think about what makes the world tick. What is the beating heart of this world? Is it a world where it's constant warfare? Is it a world where people are actually pretty chill and it's kind of like a psychedelic world where people are just trying to find their inner peace? Like, what's it really all about? What is the battle and struggle of not only the world but the people that live in it? And then populate it with characters to tell stories in that world. So it could be anything, really. It could be a king, it could be a peasant, it could be, an aristocrat, it could be a cat. It doesn't really matter as long as they take place in this world and they're actually a part of it. And this is what world building is all about. And we'll get into it more here in the subsequent slides. But we got to talk about the king of world building, the one that really seemed to have inspired everybody, the Lord of the Rings. It was developed, over many, many years and across many, many stories. And one of the things I I love to share with people who are just into Lord of the Rings, because I'm a huge Lord of the Rings nerd, is the fact that it actually takes place after an apocalypse. The Silmarillion, which a lot of people, it reads like a history book, so after you get to this, you get to the Lord of the Rings, you're like, oh boy, I can't wait to read the Silmarillion, and boom, it's a textbook. But to a nerd like me, oh boy, I can't wait to read more of it. And there, to the left of Middle Earth, there used to be an entire continent where a lot of stuff went down, and Tolkien was just like, you know what? We're just gonna just destroy everything. A flood comes in, and that's what forms what the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit takes place. Yet you would never know unless you actually looked into it. But yet you feel it in the history. And now this is a narrative design talk only about Lord of the Rings and Gandalf, and of course, just kidding. But if you ever want to talk about Lord of the Rings, just message me. Part 2, theme. So theme is something interesting in video games because we love our themes in the world of video games. So when you come to a world for a video game, theme it up. Just go crazy. Is it like a forest place? Is it a futuristic society that is based off old mythology? Is it again? I always go back to the West, but is it like haunted West? Is it weird West? Is it Victorian vampire West? Like, what kind of weird stuff are you getting into here? And what would excite you? That's the thing that always bothers me when I talk to other, narrative designers or writers. It's like, oh, I'm working on a thing, and I'm not really that excited about it. It's like, what? You have one of the most exciting jobs in the world. You gotta find something that ignites that passion. So take what you love when it comes to worlds and then run with it. Is it something that you're extraordinary, something that got you started, like a Star Wars? Is it something like, is it old West but crossed with Arthurian legends? What is it really? What would make you want to visit this world? That's something that's important too. You're going to be going there, and you're going to be a part of it, be it as a player or as a creator. So you want it to be something that you actually want to go to. And then the other thing too is build. Don't be afraid to build upon ideas created by others. There's something that everyone always says, and it's very, very true. Everything under the sun has been done, but you are unique. Your experiences and your journey through life to get here is completely your own. So whatever you like and inspires you, you take what other people have done and run with it. Do your own twist on the Lord of the Rings or something like A Legend of Zelda. Don't be afraid to go deep and to have a good time with it, because it's really important that you do that, because the fans will really react to it. And including that, navigate tropes and cliches with your own twist. Do like Beauty and the Beast, but like maybe you really, really loved football, and then you could do Beauty and the Beast, but it's like, in school, or just take your personal stories and add to it and run with it and have a good time. And then the other thing too is I always tell this to new kids who are learning narrative design: mash themes together. You don't have to just have the Old West. Maybe it takes place underwater. It's like Atlantis crossed with Lord of the Rings or something like that. Just have a good time. Then when it comes to history of your world, first world, pick a point in time and then develop up to it. So this is kind of what I meant by bullet pointing a history. So instead of doing like in the beginning and then all the way, and then you're now spending a year just on the world building and nothing's actually getting done, and then by the end of the year you're like, actually I don't really like this world. Go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to bullet point just to the beginning of my story, or I'm going to bullet point just past what happens to the event in my story. What happens at the beginning of the world or of this section of time? How did we get to where it is? Because it's important to have that history, because it's one of the things that I'll talk about a lot here is it's so important that you must remember the people in your world. It's their world to them. It means a lot to your characters. So try not to not go the full distance. Have their history be like maybe they're still getting over it. What major world events did it go through? Was it an apocalypse? Was it 2 apocalypses? That's one of my favorite things about Robert E. Howard's Conan stories, is that it actually takes place in our future 7 apocalypses later. And I always love that idea, because you have this just primordial, primal battles, but it's actually in the future. I just found that so fascinating. And then the other thing too is, how future is it? Because if you have something in the far, far future with spaceships and everything, if you go to the very, the past, you could be spending forever being like, oh gosh, I gotta catch up. So as I say here, get past the past fast. And again, you can get as detailed as you want. I never want to, when it comes to the creative world, you never want to say no. But I have met my fair share of people who have gotten stuck in world building and they never got past it. And I find if I suggest just do bullet points, boom, there they are, and they're off and running. And then, of course, the last slide of the world building talk for the world building is characters, because at the end of the day we need characters. So populate. Put characters all over the place. These are not your main characters, but these are characters that are living in this world. Anything from the king to the peasant to the guy that works at the McDonald's in your world, and he's having an interesting day. Just fill it up. Who are the heroes and villains? Who are the people that are like, oh, I gotta stay away from this guy? Or who is like the hero that like, oh, I wish I could be this person? To the characters of your world. Because to them, not only do they walk outside and smell the air, but they have dreams and aspirations and who they want to be and who they really don't like. And how attached to the history of the world are the people? Are there gods? Is there mythology? Or has all the gods died off and now you're just living in this like metropolis zone where everything is just devoid of interesting? Like, what is it? What makes them excited on a religious aspect, on a philosophy aspect? And again, you don't have to put these in your story, but definitely keep them in the back of your head, because it's there and it becomes a part of the world. And again, have fun with it. See what sticks. Run with it. You can make changes. It's not set in stone. And that is what makes this job so much fun, is because it's all about iterating and it's all about seeing what works. And speaking of different characters, let's get into character first world building. Because character first world building is one of my favorites, because it's a character focused approach. It's something where the character and the world feels perfect together. So start with a main character. What do they want in this world? Do they want to become a great warrior? Do they want to slay a bad guy? Taking a quick sip, I want to drink some of this tea. That's tasty tea. So fill in the world around them. Are they in a city like Batman? Are they in a place like New York versus Gotham? Focus on the environment and the culture they live in and how it affects them. I think that you don't really see this too often. I think what happens is people on character, they focus so much on the motivation, but not necessarily the environment they live in, which can be a hindrance, if they want to become a warrior, but they haven't even bothered to clean up their house, versus someone who is really interested in becoming really good at violin, but yet they just live in like a back gutter. It completely changes the story depending on the details in that regard. And then the other thing too is fellow heroes, rivals, villains. Populate a cast of characters. I love the term rogues gallery. People always talked about Batman's rogues gallery as being one of the best, because each villain is so distinct. So pretty much come up with your own. Like, who is your friends? Who is the bad guys that your main character may or may not come across? Maybe someone that your character will eventually hate, but like maybe meet one time on the bus and then just like never forget how much they hate them. That'd be horrible, but in a good way. That really roots the world and makes it feel real. So here's some examples of characters to ponder, because we are now at the hero slide. And consider the last warrior of a fallen house. He's seeking revenge. Maybe his brother was killed, or maybe his dog, John Wick style, was killed. Very sad. Do they exist both in the past and the future, or are they both? Is it a story where he's like jumping back in time trying to get revenge? Consider a young mother whose son was taken. Is she poor in the richest city in the world, or is she rich in the poorest? It completely changes the dynamic of the character, of the world, of the story on a dime. It's so amazing. And then, of course, a red squirrel who gains the ability to revive the dead. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? I'm not sure. How did he get these powers? Is this squirrel okay? Has anyone asked if the squirrel's okay? I have a feeling they haven't. Maybe that's part of the story. So such ideas should bring world possibilities to your mind like lightning bolts. And then you can talk with people and pitch it to them and be like, okay, it's a story, what do you think? And then you can tell on their face usually, they're like, oh, wow. Or, oh, God, what, sponge people? And that's why this is the hero slide. So moving right along. Let's So the other thing too, it's so interesting. World first, world building. You focus on the world first and the characters, but in character first world building, you focus on the characters and then the world because they are both connected and both intrinsically important. Think about the relationship that your character has with their world, and what does your character think about their world? Do they actually like it? Like, that's one of the things about Luke Skywalker that is so important, and I feel like modern Star Wars seems to be focused on this a little bit off, is that Luke hated Tatooine. He hated the being stuck in the middle of nowhere. He had big dreams and big aspirations, which is why that shot in Star Wars you can't really get away from, because it's like space is out there and infinite possibilities out there, and he's stuck in this miserable one. That's important, because if he actually liked that, if he actually enjoyed living on Tatooine, it would have been a really different movie, because it would have been like, oh, I'll find someone else to go save the princess because I'm fine here. Is the world a hindrance to your character? Do they rise above it? Do they thrive? Is this something where they really are, they love their world and they are empowered by it, or is it something that they push against? And what happens if your character is put in a random environment? Which leads to the very first time I'm ever going to give this rant, because you guys deserve the best. And this is a rant I've literally thought for like 25 years, so just give me a moment. My Spider-Man rant. Let's talk about Spider-Man for a moment. He's a character of New York City in America. He needs tall buildings to web sling on. He fights crime, and crime needs shadows. You can't just have shadows, like crime in the middle of the day, and have it be, epic. It's cool in some ways, but not for Spider-Man. You gotta have that wonderful moment where you swoop down. And you gotta have a lot of buildings and a lot of ground to cover. New York City is literally designed almost like a long, like a Tetris piece almost. And Spider-Man can zip down there and all around super fast, which is what makes those games so wonderful. The latest one from Sony and the Santa Monica Studios is amazing. Actually, it wasn't Santa Monica Studios. It was Sucker Punch, I believe. I always get them confused. But they did an incredible job, and I've always been jealous. New York is perfect for Spider-Man. And as a Spider-Man fan, when I first started working and as a kid, making my own stories, I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if Spider-Man came to my town? There was just one problem. I live in Tucson, Arizona. Tucson, Arizona is the land of the cactus. It is a lot of desert. There's no tall buildings here. That's our downtown. We have two tall buildings that are too far apart. Spider-Man can't swing on those. We got strip malls. We got Subway. You like a Subway, Spider-Man? I don't think he's ever eaten a Subway sandwich. In fact, I don't know what Spider-Man eats. We got cactus. Lots of sun. Crime-ish? We have a crime cactus called the Jumping Cholla. The Jumping Cholla is literally a cactus that senses vibrations, and if you get near it, it launches pretty much all of its cactus on you because it thinks you're a deer, and then you're covered, like this poor guy, in cactus. That's not a very good Spider-Man villain. That's not Dr. Octopus. That's terrible. So it's bad for Spider-Man stories. It is so important that you consider and take into account your character and your world, because it is the difference between Spider-Man in the middle of nowhere and Spider-Man in New York. Anyway, moving right along to concept first world building. As I take another drink of concept tea. So this is a new one. This is what I'm dubbing. I haven't really seen this talked about too much. But this is all about taking a concept and running with it. What if everyone in the world was a superhero? What if someone was reincarnated into a world that had the rules of a fantasy RPG? Like, what would the story be? Flesh them out with your own twists. So, like, if I were to say, a world where everyone had superpowers, everyone here today has a different idea of who the main character would be, what would happen, what would be the pros and cons, and you can have a really great time taking a bunch of spins on it. In Japan right now, the isekai, as they call it, genre is just so popular that it seems like every season there's 20 different anime coming out that is all dedicated to this one concept. And you have great ones and you have terrible ones, but the fans are eating up because they're inspired to really push their own concept further. And actually, I really think it's a lot of fun because then everyone can have their own take. So how this actually works is you have to think realistically about the fantastic. Take a concept and run with it. What if the dogs were in control and like people weren't, you know, what would, if cats were like robots and then they made a real cat, you know, like what weird stuff can you come up with? And what would actually be the ramification on the world? If everyone had superpowers, how do you do your superpower taxes? Like, is there some kind of accountability if you break a building, or is it just kind of like known, or did they like make a building that is like, you can't break the building? Like, you know, you run with it and see how far you can get. You know, in an RPG style world, are there people with normal powers? So you're the one guy that can't do anything. You have a guy leveling up over here all the time. He never shuts up about it. He's showing off his mount. You're like, okay, guy, I see you. I got, oh, look at your armor. I'm just going to work over here. You know, I'm the guy that works as the dishwasher, and you're the cool, all right, whatever guy. Do they resent the main person for showing up? You know, these are characters and stories that become adaptive to whatever the concept is. And it's also a great way to have a lot of twists, because you can have one of the moments where it's like, okay, so you are, you know, in a world where everyone dies when they're 100 years old, and everyone lives to be 100, but this lady is 104. That's a little bit weird. Or it's, you have like the example I said, which is, you know, a superhero world, but you're the one guy that doesn't have any superhero powers, which would just suck, because I love Spider-Man, and I would choose Spider-Man's powers. Now this is back to Spider-Man rant. I love Spider-Man. Anyway, so we've done all this, right? And let's move on to the next step. You have your world, right? You have this concept, be it a, world first world, a character first world, or a concept first world. But let's talk about rules. I think rules is something that a lot of people don't really think about too often, because that is where the fun of a world comes into. Entire stories can be born from a contradiction in your world rules. It's so true. Like if on Fridays people with green hair can fly, you know, people would dye their hair green so that they could fly, and then there'd be those people that are like, I'm not gonna dye my hair green. I'm gonna stay a redhead. You know, you could do all kinds of interesting things when you have rules. So when you're having your first, you know, infant world, start adding rules just to see what sticks. Be it magic. How does magic work? You know, is it something that needs like regents? Like you need like tea leaves to cast magic spells? Is it something where you need like ghosts? Like you need to capture a ghost and then use the ghost? Like what's the rules? Like they can only be stored in a crystal vial. Like you gotta have fun with it and run with it, because that really formulates the what I usually call it to most people, like at the branding of your world. But it really it makes it real, because like for example, I can't fly. That's a rule in this world, and someday maybe I can, but maybe I can swing on buildings someday. You never know. But experiment with what works and what you find exciting, because again, this is an exciting thing. This is something that should be fun and something that will get people excited. So be excited first. And then here's something else I want to talk about, because this is the where we've come to the villain slide. And I've thought a lot about this over the years, as all creative people have, is doubt. You know, how do you know if you've succeeded? And the sentence I came up with after numerous failed ways to convey this is, it's a world that excites you, that people want to spend time in and learn more about, and you want to tell lots of stories in. You know, follow your gut. Is this a place that you're happy with? Because as creatives, we'll never be happy. That's kind of the curse. That's why we went on this journey. It's because we're like, I need to make something, because I need to, you know, put myself out there. But by doing so, we make ourselves vulnerable, and it can allow doubt and all kinds of horrible feelings to come up. But yet, when we take doubt and use it to kill our own creations, it's such a tragedy, because maybe you're just 2 days away from creating something wonderful. And it really is something that is important to not allow yourself to do. Doubt is the enemy, which is why this is the villain slide. So just give yourself a break from doubt, create your world, have some fun, and then see if it connects with anybody. And then if it doesn't, hey, it didn't connect with people. Let's try again. Don't kill yourself over it. Tomorrow, you'll be better than you were today. I guarantee it. So moving right along, whoopsie doodle, Metaverse World building. So now we can talk about how this all ties into the sandbox and this wonderful new medium. This is where I get really excited. Um, so a world in a sandbox can be many things, and it's going to be many things because metaverse worlds are not set in stone. It's a slice of time in that world. Like I mentioned earlier, you're zipping in right at the perfect moment where they just need a hero, or you're exploring a new place that just got revealed. We had the meta glitches in season 2 and season 1, where they pulled in like the Care Bears into this world that Care Bears have never been to before. So, and then you show up and you help them out. This is something that happens all the time in the metaverse, and it can evolve and change. That's what I'm so excited about. It's completely editable. If something isn't working, if there's a quest that people don't like, you can just change it. If you feel like you need to have a quest over here, or you want to do a spin on it over here, you can just change it. It's good. It's so easy and so intuitive that it's something that is going to be really exciting to a lot of people, because as they keep coming back, they want to see what's changed. It's an experience that can be replayed, but yet it also has a history and a future. Because, like, for example, we've already had numerous versions of our experiences each season, and in fact, we've actually changed some of our experiences mid-season to reveal, like, okay, wow, there's been progress, like on the with the raffle tickets, they're getting closer to winning the alpha pass, so the characters literally are getting hyped up. You're like, oh my gosh, the countdown is about to begin. One of the things too that I've been encouraging people is we have a wonderful avatar system, but don't be afraid to have avatar players play as other characters, your own characters or avatars, if you really want to create that engagement. Then the other thing too, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, is have using Vox Edit down the line. People will be able to create their own avatars based on your world and then show up literally as one of your characters. The other thing too is, story events that play out over time that people can directly influence will become very popular. Like, it's like fan feedback, be it on a small level of if you just have one land and one experience, or you have a huge a bunch of lands and a bunch of experiences. Listening to people's feedback is something that we at the Sandbox take very, very seriously. And I hope that is something that is transferred to the players, because that is where you'll find gold. Because you can spend all that time to create something that isn't very fun, and you might think it's good, but if it's not fun, it's not fun. So listen to your players. And I just want to ask everybody, this is from one of the levels. Did you find the cat? And if you didn't find the cat, there's that darn cat. Gosh, I tried to help this poor NPC, and they just couldn't find it. But there it is. So moving right along. Taking another sip of tea now that we found that kitty. Things to consider. I've thought about this a lot, and I really think that we used to have this term called transmedia, where it was like, okay, so we're doing comic books, we're doing a TV show, we're doing cartoons, we're doing everything. It's kind of fallen out of like favor, because now everything is a multifaceted thing. But when it comes to the Sandbox, I really think that facilitating your worlds and facilitating your stories with other sorts of avenues, such as comic books, or making maybe a short film or like a short story, and that feeds back into your world, is something that will be really beneficial, not only from a engagement perspective, but also from a hype. You can have a short story that is leading up to the release of a land, or you find in a land a code that takes you somewhere. It's really going to be insane all the fun stuff that you can do from a world perspective in the Sandbox, because there's so many different avenues to engage on and unlock. I really think that when players engage with an experience, it becomes their story. So not only is it the main story of the experience or the area or the world or the land, but it's also their story as they navigate the metaverse, right? Because I really think that we need to keep in mind the narrative of, you are a being that is in this brand new realm, and you're going on multiple adventures, kind of like a hero sometimes, maybe the villain sometimes. And what you do and how you engage is now your story. And then when you sign off from the metaverse, right, where you're like, okay, I'm done for the day, you now have a Santa's bag filled with experiences to look back on. And then you're like, wow, I can't wait to see what I do tomorrow. And then, creating lands that are the start of many different kinds of stories will be beneficial, as it allows for many paths. and then the players will influence each other, and it's your own slice of the universe. We'll get into all this here in this slide. This slide has a lot of words, and this is the one slide that I wanted to keep like this because this is literally hours of me theorizing what the future of the sandbox is going to be from a story perspective, and this really excites me. So to jump into it real fast, because it'll be easy to update, people will constantly keep changing lands. I have this theory that people will have a bunch of versions of the land ready to go as time progresses. So, for example, taking a royal castle experience, right? It's a wedding. It's like Game of Thrones, and it's like, wow, oh my gosh, the princess is getting married, and it's such a great day. But then week 2 hits, and now that same castle is under siege. Where's the king? Where's the princess? Where's the queen? What's happening? Oh my gosh, who are these people attacking us? And then they lose the siege. Like this, it doesn't end well. So when you show up again, it's castle ruins. Everything is destroyed. So that is the that is the timeline version. But you can also, from that castle, go out into the forest outside of the town. You can then go to the caverns under the mountain that you get to from the forest, and then from the caverns get to the coastal town, which then takes you to the enemy castle that attacked our friends at the real castle. And if you go at week 1, so while the wedding's going on, and then you go to the enemy castle in week 1, they're plotting for war. They're like, you know what? I'm tired of those people. Let's get in there. They're celebrating a wedding if their people are hungry or whatever it is. Let's go get them. So week 2, while that castle is under siege, the enemy castle is celebrating a victory. They know that they're going to win this thing. But on week 3, while the other castle's in ruins, they realize that there's a spy amongst them. And then the story continues and goes from there. And this can be anything from a single quest to a complete, redoing of the experience. But this is something that will get people talking because it's going to be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to miss out on this. There will be lands and experiences that change so much that there will be videos made that will cover the lore. Like, oh my gosh, last year's event was insane. Here's what happened. Boom, boom, boom. People could write short stories based off of the crazy twists and turns. And because we have the ability in the sandbox to do solo and multiplayer, you can experience these things together. You can do them solo, have solo adventures. It's really mind-blowing. And this is something I've thought a lot about because it's so exciting. Because you can't really do this. I mean, you can in other video games with updates. But it's not like this, where it's constantly like, some things aren't changing, some things are, and it's just like this Rubik's Cube. Because that's a great way to describe it. It's like a Rubik's Cube because it's constantly shifting and changing. Yet you're having fun and you're building stuff, and you kind of want to one up your friends and everything. And we've now stared at this slide for long enough, so we'll continue right along. And here's something I love about the sandbox, and this is something that really separates us from other places, is because we have the marketplace. So say that you're a narrative designer like me, who is terrible at art like me, who really loves what he does like me, but is like, I don't want to bother these amazing artists with, hey, can you make like a cat, warrior, samurai, robot, half dog? No? Okay. Luckily, we have artists from all around the world that create stuff for the marketplace, and with Sand, you can go and pretty much type in a theme, type in anything you want, and pick and choose what kind of assets that you want for your world, and then run with it. There will be whole, people who literally just I'm going to make everything that's in like a castle, or everything that's space themed. In fact, we've already had that, and you can really run with it. And the other thing too is, if you are a artist who doesn't have a narrative designer and you just want to make really cool stuff, using VoxEdit you can, and then use Game Maker to shape everything. So there's going to be this wonderful ecosystem of people wanting to create really interesting things and maybe not having necessarily the team to do it, and go on the marketplace to get it, then make their own experiences. Or, for example, if they have a world that they love, if the creators really, put those assets on the marketplace, they can then do their own spin-offs. Like, it's going to be this wonderful, wonderful ecosystem of people creating stories, sharing stories, and innovating on it that I'm really, really excited about. And here we reach the final slide, the slide that will die, because this is just me giving a few more tips for everybody. Tips for the doggy bag, as I like to say. They always know, don't they, our players? They always know when a designer doesn't take that extra step. They can feel when worlds aren't fleshed out even a little bit or feel hollow and unlived in. And give the respect to yourself, give the respect to your players and the characters in your world to just go that extra step to think about these things. Because I've played enough games where you're like, oh wow, okay, I get it. This is like, okay, it's like Legend of Zelda. Oh, okay, it's like Legend of Zelda. Just go there and have fun. Please have fun. It is something that shouldn't be worried about. The other thing too, I would think about this is know your details too as you're going along. Even if you have to make it up on the spot. So if I were to tell you, this is the story of Dan. He lives in a world where ghosts have jobs, and then you were to ask me, what do ghosts do with the money? And I just stared at you and hoped that you'd go away. That wouldn't be very satisfying. So just keep those things in mind as you go about. And then another note is that even though you are in control of the world, I mentioned this earlier, your beings live in it. So give them that respect. While we could just like an angry god push delete and then they're gone forever. To them, they really hope that they can become famous or whatever it is. So just keep that in mind. And then also one last thing, and this is really important, because confidence is key, even if you're not sure. Never call your world stupid, or never introduce your world as this world isn't very good. It's the story of a dog. Like people, as soon as you have it like I'm not sure about this, people tune off. So have confidence in yourself, in your world, and even if you're still not sure, it will still be good because you're a great creator and you just maybe don't even know it yet.